Welcome to Backroom Talk.
Hey, James.
So excited to be in Backroom Talk.
I know, right? Final. The
First
guy
time.
the guy that created Backroom is in Backroom Talk.
But let's pick a little bit, if we can, on the concept of fasting. No one's asking the hard questions. It's like, well, what is the formal, deepest beliefs and intentions of people observing this? Okay, well then, where does fitness come into that? And I think it's like number 12 on the list.
But I am curious about any differences between men and women, men versus women through Ramadan.
To listen to more Backroom Talk, be sure to subscribe. Learn to design personalized programs with the OPEX system of coaching by heading to opexfit.com.
All right. Well, guys, welcome to another episode of Backroom Talk, and we have a very special guest here. Hey, James.
So excited to be in Backroom Talk.
I know, right? Final. The
First
guy
time.
the guy that created Backroom is in Backroom Talk.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. That's very meta.
Yeah,
I didn't
you're
know that I created the naming of the show that I have never been on yet.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the notion of Backroom Talk all the time
yeah.
in
Oh, for
education,
sure.
and so that's where it came from.
That's cool. Did you guys ever explain front room, back room?
I
yeah,
don't.
we did.
Did we?
Yeah, yeah.
In
yeah.
that,
Okay.
we did that initial
First.
like little kickoff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we did. Yep.
Would you like to?
So now it's actually front room, back room.
Front Backroom Talk.
Well,
Well, we
We're
do have
taking the back
no,
room
no.
talk and we're bringing it to the front.
Only some of it though, because we have some back. This is Backroom Talk, but we have back room. So like the conversation that
But
we
then
had
no one
prior.
would hear it.
Exactly. So so we have back room, not for these people, and then we have back room for these people, and then front room is for everyone. Right? So it's like tiers.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're a pretty good tier. But what we talked about prior to hitting record, that's back room, so we can't
Okay.
talk about that.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, but the explanation is the discussions you have with your clients is the front room, and you take into consideration how they're going to perceive the information and how they're going to know it and understand it, just so you can communicate really well. And back room is sometimes all the contemplative back room stuff that goes on in your head and you think about and discuss, and yeah, you try to formulate a plan as to how to get it out to the front room.
That's what we do here.
Yeah,
It is.
That's
Back
cool.
room is where the realness occurs. The realness.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I've been missing
Indeed.
out, and so
Yeah.
here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you. And guys, as always, if you're listening on audio, please make sure you subscribe and leave us a review. And then if you're on YouTube watching this, make sure you also hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment to let us know if you enjoyed the episode. But I guess we got to get to that episode before you know if you enjoyed it or not. And we will be talking about Ramadan.
They'll like it. That'll be a
You
good
guys
one.
are going to love
Look,
it.
James here, man. Like,
Yeah.
This is good.
Yes,
We're
indeed.
already
Do we
good.
need to even discuss anything?
Just finish the
Let's
episode now.
That's it. Good night, everyone.
No, I mean, guys, this thing is releasing on the first day of Ramadan. We brought it back. Normally, we release episodes on Wednesday. We're bringing it to a Monday so that it can coincide with that first day for coaches that are working with clients through those 30 days. 30 days or 31 days? How many?
It depends. Yeah, it's so Ramadan's
Depends
based
on their
on
calendar.
Yeah, it's based on the crescent moon. So it's the first sighting of the crescent moon to the last one. So I think usually it's 28 to 30 days.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
It just blew my mind that I wonder if it's on because the lunar cycle for menses is 29 and a quarter days.
Yep.
I wonder if it's coinciding with the same kind of cosmological.
Yeah, there's considerations.
Timings.
Yeah, there's considerations. Like, when you look at who doesn't do Ramadan, right? Like who's okay to not practice. It's women that are breastfeeding, the elderly, someone that's sick, and someone that's menstruating. Actually, they're able to not do it.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking around the same timelines, but the 29 and a quarter days lands right in your 28 to 30. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And then it's all based on the Muslim calendar or the Islamic calendar, which is also, it's not like 360 days. It depends on the moon
355?
cycles. It's a range, so I think
Okay.
it's like 350 to 360.
Okay.
Is how long the
Which is 355 average.
Yeah. I think I might just be inherently just like saying ranges around what you're saying.
354 to 356. It's not 355.
Well, it's playing it safe, right? Because if it's 364, I'm right, and you're not.
And I'm way off by 9.
There we go. Well, guys, for those that may not be familiar with what Ramadan is, James, could you give us a little bit more context on what is actually going to be going on and what clients will be going through that period?
Not really, but I can come at it from a non-Muslim
Yes.
person who just kind of looking at it from a lens of what do people do and how does fitness and lifestyle and vitality fit into that. So I will stop short with explaining exactly what's inside of it, but say that it's a practice of honoring a particular time period where you're just not going to participate in liquid or food for the entire sun's appearance.
Sex, tobacco.
Okay, and there's other things.
Like anything that's would be considered sinning.
Right? Yep. And from my lens, again, I only see it from a health and vitality perspective of, water is kind of important, and so is food. So what do you do when you're not going to participate in that? And it's done for a period of time, and it's based upon just deepest intentions of sacrificing a portion of your fuel for other reasons, and also just showing that it's not necessarily something that you have to partake in all the time, and taking these periods of times where you don't actually participate in ingesting food is in their belief an opportunity to express your deepest reasons for being. And so people participating in that for 30 days, again, from my lens, to see the best explanation of it is to try to figure out how to create balance in their vitality throughout this period of time. Notwithstanding, let's not forget the real deepest intentions as to why people are doing it. So I didn't offer an explanation as to what that is, but I'm just saying that's my input for where I sit here today for my lens and helping people get through it.
So the nuts and bolts on what is actually happening around fasting, like what time period is the fasting that's happening, and when are people able to ingest food and liquids?
Yeah, I think simply it's sun up to sundown, right? Yeah, so it's like sun up, you're done. Like you can't ingest anything, you can't have water, you can't have food, and then as soon as that sun goes down, then you can continue. You can fuel your body, and just culturally you see that I think James said it really well, where it's like honoring their deepest level of being, because it is a lot of, in different cultures, it's a time for celebration, right? So sun up to sundown, it's like you're laying low. Some people still have their responsibilities that they have to do on a day-to-day basis. Sun goes down, and it's like family, friends, they all get together, and it's like a feast and appreciation and all of that. So I think the simplest way to say it would just be sun up, sundown. You're not partaking in those things.
Now, where does fitness fit in? Because obviously the largest priority in this time is, engaging in the practice of Ramadan and, honoring religion there. How does fitness fit into that picture?
Yeah, the cool thing that I think about from the Prophet Muhammad's journey from Mecca to, I think it was Medina, and fitness didn't exist then. That's, like our folly around doing resistance training, and do you know what I mean? And I think that's where we need to go to start the base form discussion of like, well, how does fitness fit into this whole picture? And I think that people should take a real hard look as to where fitness fits in to your question today, recognizing that it really is an unbelievable opportunity and a gift that we have, but it could also be, in the same sentence, a real great opportunity for 30 days to see how fortunate we are to even have the opportunity to express ourselves physically. If you see it in that light, as opposed to like, oh, I got this 30 days now, how am I supposed to fit fitness in? How about you see it as like, well, how frickin' grateful are you that you actually have the experience that was not around for like 1,400 years in terms of where fitness fits into that. So I think about, the management of that based upon, and I guess we keep laying back to that. That's why I talked to you about having this discussion and saying what I think is really important for everyone to hear is to how to try to fit your deepest intentions and your beliefs and see where fitness fits in all around that. It's not where does fitness fit into where these beliefs are. I think that's where it starts. And so I'll just start with that as being the base support for our conversation around where fitness fits in. I think it's the wrong question. I think the question should be, what are your fundamental, deepest beliefs and how you're practicing that day to day and your deepest intentions? And then how do you balance whatever this thing is that has not been around for a long period of time around that?
What
I think that starts it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of coaches listening that they're tuning into this thing, looking at the title, and they're like, I want to have a little bit more insight into how do I work with my clients throughout this period of time. And what you're proposing is that you start with a conversation, right? And you, instead of a coach saying, I work with someone that's going through Ramadan, how do I fit fitness around Ramadan? Are you saying they should have a conversation with their clients and start to ask a little bit deeper questions and, challenge their clients a little bit on what they should or shouldn't be doing in fitness around this time? Like what would step number one be?
Yeah, we're presuming there'll be challenges. I'm just saying that I think that is the starting point, is to ask about just, yeah, and we're jumping right into like the deepest aspect of consulting right there, but I just don't want to waste the time of taking the 7-step approach to getting to those deepest pieces, right? Otherwise, anyone could do a show on exercise through Ramadan and how do you like manipulate nutrition and et cetera, and I just no one's asking the hard questions. It's like, well, what is the formal deepest beliefs and intentions of people observing this? Okay, well then, where does fitness come into that? And I think it's like number 12 on the list, honestly. So yes, I think that you want to have coaches push the idea of saying, well, what is our intentions around this, and how do we be grateful for our opportunity for physical expression, and how does this fit into what we're working with here for 30 days, so we can actually have the best expression and observance of what we're trying to do here for these 30 days. So yes, ask the tough questions around intentions, and then you can try to figure out exactly where they're ready to move and shake and how to balance things for what we know as principles for resisting entropy and maintaining vitality and balance for 30 days.
Yeah, let's say you're there, right? Like, coach listening, they have that conversation, the stars are aligned, and they're like, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. What would you propose X, Y, and Z be? Obviously X, Y, and Z has to be personalized, and it has to fit in with their intentions and so on and so forth. But what are some principles around someone not eating from sun up to sundown for 30 days, and what are they doing in their exercise program, resistance training, energy systems training? Like, what are some principles around that?
Yeah, you're asking me to be very generalized in my answer, and I appreciate that challenge. And it's tough for me to answer it that way. It's a complex answer, but you have to take it into context with principle. So first, you want to figure out what this person's experience is with this whole thing, because experience will largely dictate the positives and negatives they had with going through this in the past. What is their training age and history, all the principles we know about assessment, and figuring out exactly where they sit in this whole thing, right? And that largely dictates, okay, well, what is the effect of exercise going to have on you? So someone comes in, great, blood sugar balance and great muscle coordination, great pacing capability, great maturity, great cognitive function. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're just manipulating a few variables. Someone comes in brand new to exercise, thinks that broadcasting, commercialization, commodity of exercise is the big thing, thinks that intensity is the answer, is not really having a good balance of lifestyle, doesn't eat cleanly, and now what are we doing to this period of time? I can tell you what not to do. You don't do intense activity. You don't do cortisol dumping, high intensity group classes. That's what you don't do. You don't do I haven't exercised for a while, so I'm just going to go out and run 10K and see exactly if that can motivate me to kind of get going again. That's what you don't do. Then what do you come back to what you do in general principles? It should be slow resistance training and easy aerobic work, because both of those on a physiological basis with the preempting of experience are not going to cause the most damaging dose response that requires hydration or fuel acutely. And so you need to say, well, what are the things that they can practice in the day, if they can, during those times, that are going to be capable. If they can't practice exercise, or maybe you can give me some idea on the allowances for practices of physical expression during the day, then you have to say, well, where am I going to meet them where they're at, but also take into consideration that they are going to be in very reductionist terms, dehydrated and low on fuel. If that is the case, you got to say, well, what physical expression will not take away resources from people, which is an electrical expression and anything that can be sustained for a long period of time. So then if you're like, well, I don't even know if they can practice both of those, then that's up to you to design a training program that gives them good electrical stimulation and sustainable work for as long as possible. And then that can be done, in my opinion, quite frequently and quite a lot. And when you go a middle zone, which is just random shit or, incorrect design, not treating someone where they're at, etc., then you're going to pay the price of admission, which is blood sugar mismanagement, possible, cases that could cause some serious issues for people and health complications.
What's the intention of that resistance?
Or in the worst case scenario, a dependency upon the sun goes down and you're going to fucking go for it for 90 minutes. And now you're at a complete, depleted state. But you got your kick on, and now you're going to create some kind of a deprivation of fuel. You're going to result in sleep disruption. I mean, it's just going to cause this nasty duct tape scenario for 30 days.
So intention of the resistance and aerobic training that's happening in this month-long period, and obviously this has to be set up in conversation with the client like you were discussing earlier, James, but is the coach, when they sit down to program, thinking about like, how can I get this person stronger? How can I push their aerobic progression? Or is the intention of the program to have them move and enjoy fitness every day?
Yeah, that it goes back to the training age and experience you got from the assessment.
Yeah.
Because you have to take into consideration what experience do they have, because then you can figure out what their actual movement and adaptation will occur in 30 days. So if someone is, brand new, then by all means you can push to improve things in 30 days, because still the dose response in resistance and easy aerobic work is going to result in some improvements. So you're actually intentionally trying to, improve it, but it's indirectly adapting anyways because of, what they're capable of expressing. And then you take someone else with lots of experience. No, you're basically just, keeping things steady for 30 days and maintaining some of those physical fitness characteristics. And I don't want to move it off into that area, but offline or another time, we could talk about that, because there are some really interesting nuanced stories of scenarios in which things have to be maintained during 30 days. And I find that really interesting. And there's some research on that, performance during Ramadan, as well as nutritional changes during Ramadan. And I find that fairly interesting. Not to sidetrack it, but that's when it's really important. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
in regards to that,
the World Cup was going on during Ramadan.
At one point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's also important to think about what is their Ramadan experience age as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you do have, you have people that, they do their first Ramadan when they're 35 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they've been training for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, having the ability to have a conversation and talk about, how has Ramadan felt the last decade is super important for people to understand. And it's easier to connect what they cannot do, what they should not do if they've experienced that, for 10 or 20 years. But if someone's jumping in, they're like, I've actually never done this before. Like I've fasted, one day. I've fasted one day out of 30 before, but I've never gone 30 straight days and fasted throughout the day. I think that's also important to understand. Like, what are people's experiences in Ramadan, separate from fitness as well.
Yeah, and I think the to keep going on that point there, I love that idea of what we call it. It's not sport age, but if Ramadan was a sport, you got to know the sport age.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But it's the experience of the practice
Mm-hmm.
of it. But let's pick a little bit, if we can, on the concept of fasting. So the truest definition of fasting would be 72 hours of no macronutrients, but it does include water or anything that's not going to add in terms of macronutrients or any kilocalories, let's say. So it's actually not true fasting. It's just an observed fasting when the sun's up. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but there is meal consumption that does occur when the sun goes down.
Oh yeah,
Therefore,
for a lot of people, it's
Yeah.
2,000 plus calories.
Yeah,
like
so-
sitting down and it's like.
So
getting it in.
that I think is interesting, right? Like, how do you splice that? How do you maybe change sleep-wake time scenarios? How do you dose, correct kind of quote-unquote training, and then, the classic primal recovery from said training, primal meaning like you got to hunt for your food and you give up all your resources and now you're given food and the sun is down. That's great. But now you got to sleep because you need 30 more days of this. So I find that window fairly interesting in conversation. I'm not sure if we want to go there to talk about some of the nuances around that, to kind of give people exposure to resistance, exposure to aerobic work, but also get in the right amount of nutrition, let's say, in totality, because they still can, prior to sun the next morning, also have some calories also. So I guess it's probably trying to fit that into a window that allows this, I guess what we're going to call it, a 12-hour opportunity for exercise, both resistance and aerobic work, and possibly 3 dosings of meals that is going to give them in that small window, right? And that's not a huge window, really, for all of that. So let's just get to that point that it's really not true fasting. It's fasting for an observed period. Let's call it intermittent fasting for where the person is. And it's more or less like an opportunity of 30 days of just moving variables and trying to fit that in.
And it's also interesting to think about where you are in the world, right? So if you're somewhere where the sun is up for 18 hours a day versus, 6 hours a day, right? You have to think about those things as well. So you think about that. You also think about culturally what's happening, right? So if you live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and you have a job, right? You're probably doing different things than someone in the Middle East is doing, where the entire town community just completely shuts down during Ramadan. So it's like, what are my responsibilities with work, vocation, right? It's like, what does that look like versus how long is the sun up where I'm at? Just thinking about those things are really important when you start to organize that plan and that schedule as well. And I've worked with dozens of people that observe Ramadan in coaching, and just the nuanced differences between where someone is in the world, what they do for work, how many hours the sun is up per day, just completely changed it. So you couldn't just like have this like, this is my Ramadan template and I'm going to attach this to everyone, because it was so different, right? Some people, it was like they wanted to exercise, right? It was just something, but they were like, I'm good with whatever you give me. I just want to still move, and I don't want to not do anything for 30 days in terms of exercise. So it's like, do we do that coming out of fasting? Do we do that going into fasting? Do we do that after the largest meal? Do we do that? You know what I mean? So you start to think about what kind of exercise they're doing based on where they're putting that exercise at inside of their day. Because trying to give someone, even if it's slow resistance and slow aerobic work, after they've been fasting for 13, 14 hours and they're just not used to it, you might be setting them up for failure. So understanding where to put those things, and like James saying, how can you work within that window is really important.
How do you make that decision for different individuals on where exercise fits, on when, bolus eating is happening? Is it something that, they've had experience with in the past and you're going to be able to work through? Or is it like, brand new person, never done it before, those 30 days, like you're going to have to adjust and change things as they give you feedback?
Yeah, I think I'll go first. I think it's you just have to experiment with that single person, right? You know what type of exercise you're giving them and what type of exercise you're not going to give them, but it's just an experimentation, right? Where it's like, hey, this is the first week of Ramadan. I have this plan, right? What's always worked the best for me is to give exercise going into the fast. That's always worked really well, because the exercise is not intense. They don't need to like replenish sugars, nothing. Like they feel good after that, and they're just using that as an opportunity to go throughout their day, right? And then they go into, sun goes down, they replenish, they eat X amount of calories. They have probably 2 meals is probably the most people can even fit in, and then they're to get like an adequate amount of sleep. Then they wake up right before the sun comes out. They have another meal, right? Or they train and then have that meal post workout, and then they go into that fast. But I found the most success actually, waking up, hitting some exercise, getting a meal in, and then just going throughout your day. Or waking up, getting a meal in, exercising if you can get that in before that first meal in before the sun comes up, and then going throughout your day. But I found it's been brutal in my experience trying to give people exercise in any way coming out of a fast or at the tail end of a fast, just because they haven't drank water for 12 hours. That's just very challenging.
Yeah, but that may be one of the things you first start with, perhaps in the prescription. And I think to add to that, just keep thinking about what the intentions are of the exercise, and you're not trying to win anything for 30 days. That's what we got to keep remembering. And you're not trying to lose fat for 30 days. That's of course we're going to seep into all those things that people think are the intentions around exercise. That's why I said it goes back to just remember why you're doing this entire thing, and be fortunate that you can actually just do physical expression. And that should lead in every session. So thereby, maybe some principles could be hydration first and foremost when the sun goes down. That's something you probably want to knock on right away. Simply because whether you want to do electrical currents or sustainable activity, it's probably important to have that acute hydration just go north, right? If we were to do any variables of measurement for serum or anything like that, we want that to go north. If that was to have, we can get nitty gritty with kind of water. I would say it has to be some form of electrolytes that are going to be inside of that, whether it's naturally occurring or you can actually dose that. That would be really appropriate, just based upon the current. Let's assume they're in a Middle East setting for what that would be, more than 12 hours of sunshine. And then I would say that I would have no qualms about getting some form of nutrition in right at that period of time post hydration, as soon as the sun goes down, and then applying some form of physical expression right after that, and then getting another dosing of nutrition prior to bedtime, and then if needed the same thing in the morning time. But that would probably be another nuanced case where if someone needs to do another form of exercise session, if they're going to be doing doubles, then I would apply that pre-fasting scenario where they have some fuel. I just think that the concept of going into exercise, people are like, oh, but I heard if you're going to eat before you exercise, it's not going to be as fat burning. And again, my whole point is why are you even considering fat burning? Right? Again, it goes back to intentions of just be happy that you can do physical expression over these 30 days and try to figure out a way that you can keep your nutrition up and maintain that physical activity.
Yeah.
And that's where we talk about just trying to maintain resisting entropy, keeping mental acuity, and allowing yourself to express the special aspect of this observance.
Yeah, I think for a non-Muslim coach who's working with a client through Ramadan and maybe hasn't had experience here yet, looking at this period and the fasting that's occurring, it may be very easy to conflate the experiences of something like intermittent fasting or fasting for diet purposes with the experience of the fast that's happening during Ramadan. But they're very different intentions and different things that are happening. And whereas someone might be doing IF for fat loss or acuity reasons, that's certainly not why someone is engaging in the practice of Ramadan.
Yeah. As you were just saying that, I also keep thinking about the individuals that don't experience, let's call it quality practices of good cognition and good, food practices day to day regardless. And now they're going to be dealt with this blow of not having a sugar drip that they normally do have in their waking hours in occurrence, right? So that's a big shift for a whole ton of people, which is the main reason why we are hesitant against fasting for a lot of individuals, is because they haven't earned the right through day-to-day practice of blood sugar management to even think about some form of fasting. So although it's this really fancy new, apparently fancy method of just this simple deprivation of calories over a number of days, I think it's a health disaster for a whole, I would even suffice to say 90% of the entire population doesn't earn the right to be able to do that. So I think about those things in terms of because you mentioned coaching of individuals now that may not have experience with it, the coach doesn't have experience with it. Take that into consideration. Ask these questions like, would I just normally give this person a fast? And if you're like an adamant no, based upon the principles that then you're going to have to get all your ducks in a row to make sure that they're going to be able to maintain blood sugar balance throughout. And now it gets into, I think, fairly interesting nuanced conversation of what kind of total cals and kind of cals you give this person to maintain a balanced level of blood sugar management for 30 days. Because otherwise they're going to be in a massive shitstorm of an up and down, with a big suffering going on during sun hours, and then they're going to be partying like a rock star in the dark hours, and that's unsustainable. Yeah, and they may come out the other end okay, but it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, a couple common themes that I've gotten in coaching people through this at the end is I feel a lot better, right? I feel really good, right? That's one. It's like I feel good. My digestion feels really good. I feel on throughout the day. My rhythm feels really good. And secondarily, it's also I want to continue to do this. Like I've heard that so many times, right? It's like, yeah, I kind of want to extend it another 2 weeks or a month because I'm feeling really good. What are some?
Those are people getting the benefits of the blood sugar management from either the total cal changes or the macro style changes.
Yep.
So they're getting the classic fasting benefits of maintaining blood sugar balance.
So I was just gonna loft that up to you and ask you why would we hear that from people?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that it's happening with the people that you work with on it, but it's probably because of the magician that you are in like manufacturing a good design for nutrition for them. But those individuals are just not doing a good job day to day of maintaining blood sugar balance. Mm-hmm. So whether that's aversions through food, the wrong kind of foods, it's the it's just a list of things that we can go through. But just think about that, right? That people are taking food away through the waking hours, and they're feeling better. Like just as the naturalist that I am, just says that makes absolutely no sense, right? Where we're supposed to be digesting foods based upon resources we pull from the planet during the day that gives us energy, that allows us to do the things we want to do. And you're saying I'm taking that away and you feel better. That's not an opportunity for us to jump all over that practice. That's for us to go, what is happening when you're not fasting?
Yep.
And then it goes back to trying to figure out how to individualize what we call, in principle, cognition as being the highest order principle in why people should be fueling themselves.
So a common theme that I would always see is they just calm the fuck down throughout the day. Yeah. That was it, right? Yeah. They were like, it had nothing to do with the food.
Yeah.
It was like, what does your day now look like
so it
relative?
Forced a parasympathetic response.
Yeah, they just calm down throughout the day.
Okay, got it.
They're like, yeah, I'm taking it easy throughout the day. Work is a lot lower, stress is a lot lower. I'm going for walks throughout the day to take my mind off of food. You know what I mean? Just like little things like that. It's like, yeah, I think you're going through your day to day with a lot less stress.
That's good insight.
So
yeah.
That's something.
Well, that could be something you could jump on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
to say like, well, what is this telling us? Right. Maybe we need to, change up behaviors, change up thought patterns, change up how you're setting your day up. What is these things that you're doing day to day that's not providing you purpose in life, that's giving you energy as opposed to pulling energy from you, et cetera. So I think that's great insight to help for coaches who get in that position. Let's not forget that it possibly could be the lifestyle issue with the cognition changes that you still want to touch on.
Would you adjust macros based on where someone is prior to going into Ramadan for Ramadan specifically? I
think it's a thing that will happen. I would say. I don't know about you. I'm not, and I'd be the same. I'm probably into the dozens of people that I work with through that. I didn't actually think about a macronutrient change in totality. I was more around the lines of like, let's just manage the thing as best as possible. And I don't have any math on it, but I would say that there was a net loss in total calories over, let's call it a 30 days, as opposed to like a separate 30 days and a separate 30 days prior. And I think that naturally happened just because of the window in digestibility, sun being down, cortisol manipulation, satiety levels are different, activity does change. So those kinds of things. Yeah. I think it was very, very few times where I actually did little manipulations in macronutrients. I think it was probably, indirectly some big dogs, coaches were coaching some people that wanted to compete during this period of time or do competition. And we were trying to like figure out a way of maintain blood sugar balance while still having to do some hard activity. But I think that's the odd case. Yeah.
I've tried it a few times and failed. It always ended up being too much. So that net loss, I always saw like a 20 to...
Oh, you tried to maintain...
I would still decrease. I would decrease calories because it's just, you're eating 3,500 calories. You're just not going to get that in. Try to manipulate it down like 25, 30% and was still way too much.
Yeah.
So I just went away from the prescription of macros at all, just because all of my prescriptions were too high, right? And I didn't want to undershoot either, right? If someone's like, they're like, hey, like I'm actually hungry and I have 2 hours left, before I'm at my stop point before I go to bed. So I think it's just a feel it out type thing, right? It's like, don't overdo it, which I think is very common, right? Just as an aside, I did like a quick like YouTube search of like, Ramadan and fitness. Like, I just wanted to see what people were talking about. And it was all how to increase muscle mass during Ramadan, how to lose fat during Ramadan, how to, it was all around the stuff that you would think it would be, right?
Of course.
So that's what was all on YouTube, right? So that was just like that was 5 minutes before we jumped on this. I was like, what are people talking about around this? So that shit's out there, and people are looking at they're looking for that stuff. So I think it's really important to think about not how do we perfect or maximize or do anything like that, but it's like, how do we fit fitness in with Ramadan? Not how do we fit Ramadan around our fitness and our goals, right, aesthetically. So I think that's the first thing that we need to think about and talk to clients about. But people are out there, right? Like the big dogs clients that James was talking about, where it's like, hey, I'm coming off competition. I'm getting ready to compete. I need to maintain because I have this competition. Now that we said, like, hey, these are like the things to think about and don't put fitness first. What about people that are they're like, I'm not putting fitness first during this time, but day 31, I gotta get ready to compete again, right? Or I gotta get ready to step on stage again or do this thing, whatever the heck that is. What are some strategies to think about during these 30 days to not maximize, James, but lower the chances of you losing your gains, right? Throughout this time.
If it matters to them.
If it matters to them.
Yeah, it's I try to make it simple by saying I'm trying to look at their level of resilience overall and get some form of assessment as to, really how they can handle stress, how they're going to put up with stress, how they're going to adapt to this new changing environment. And I'm going to use that as a kind of an idea before I start to try to manipulate any things. So let's put it in two scenarios. Very low resilient individual that showed a whole bunch of fuckery basically coming into this period of time, and you're now going to be like trying to figure out how to maintain or keep performance high during this period of time. You're probably going to be doing a whole lot more pulling back and trying to figure out how to keep things in place. You got the other person who's really high resilient. You're pretty much putting the gas pedal on and trying to figure out, because they will overcome and adapt based upon any changes that are going to occur, even if you got to change up macronutrients. And that's where you're doing like where the minutes matter, right? Is like, okay, as soon as the sun goes, you're just waiting for it to like the drop over to the horizon. It's like electrolytes, BCAAs, but you're being like super, super tight on that for those individuals. And then, I don't think it's anything more than just keeping the gas pedal on based upon what they can fit in, and just, praying indirectly the whole time for 30 days that they're going to survive during it. And in some cases they do. And you'll get reports, like you said, even on the performance area, where they're like, oh, I saw these gains and this is what I was capable of. And it was a great learning for them because they saw that they overcame some of these things, based upon that. So I would say look at the assessment of some form of resilience prior to, let's just use it in terms of putting the gas pedal down. And if you got any gut instinct where you're like, they haven't shown real good signs of resilience, I would find ways of like really being tight on management of performance variables, because you're probably not going to make much of an adaptation or keep things humming. As it should be. If people haven't earned the right through good practices prior to this, they haven't earned the right to go mad. Yeah.
Putting physiology aside,
yeah.
What are some other opportunities to increase characteristics or whatever it could be during this time with your client, where it's like physiology aside, it's like we don't give a shit about that. What are some obvious things? What are some obvious things that stick out to you where it's like, oh, we can use this time to do this?
You mean like psychological
Could
things
be.
or cognitive variables, things like that? I don't know. I think it's a wide open plate based upon each person. I could just use some examples where there was an opportunity to learn more. So with some dedicated time and allowances, they were able to dig into some particular areas of interest that they wouldn't have had time otherwise to do. So that could be the same for really. I remember, this is where I have a deeper empathetic understanding and tried to go down that road of understanding people's intentions based upon this. I had a couple of clients who I asked them to really dig deeper into this overall deepest purpose, right? The biggest purpose behind all this, of the big Muslim beliefs and the 5 pillars and the fuel history and things like that. And so I took a journey with those 2 clients along this period of time to learn myself, but also allow them an opportunity to dig deeper into this practice. And they came out the other side definitely more grateful around how physical fitness fits into this whole scheme. So I don't think it seemed like a I'd have a magical answer to that, but it's nothing more than just trying to be context dependent for each person and saying, like, what are the things that I think you could really take some time and dedicate to, and I just give you a couple there of learning about some specific things, and then also the opportunity to dig into the deepest reasons behind this observance.
Yeah, the big takeaway there though is that there are other things outside of physical adaptation.
Yeah, you're moving us in a really feel good scenario.
No, I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important
because I shouldn't be making fun of it, but yeah, it matters. It does matter, and there's a lot of things that matter more. Things like family and things like taking contemplation to think about your entire purpose, thinking about what kind of impact are you attempting to make. What is your belief in contribution? Do you think you know everything? Do you think that you're still on the road to not knowing things? Are you willing to take 30 days of sacrificing some time away from a vocation or other things that'll give you just some eye-opening experiences? Are you willing to do that? So yeah, I think it does matter. Yeah, there's other things that matter a lot.
I don't know how to follow that up.
You mean just the conversation on some of those really important things?
It's pretty
Let's
important.
Keep it going. Well, I mean, we can keep it going. I find it. I just find the whole concept around it, the research into it, Ramadan itself. I'm really super interested in culture and belief, and how people pick up these tools along the way for tens of thousands of years that we use as a base support to come up with how we live our lives and what we express. And I think Ramadan is an unbelievable, interesting N=1 where we can tie in fitness and people's beliefs and practices of culture and day to day. And I think you come out on the other side with my hope, which is an appreciation for fitness. And that's maybe where we can finish, or we can continue on that note, which is just gratitude. That we got to have so much gratitude around our opportunity for physical expression. And if we use that going into this period of time, i.e. in your words, Ramadan before fitness, I think we'll all come out on the other side a whole lot better and build a repertoire of skills that will allow coaches and people over time to approach this thing with a new light, which is like, aren't you really grateful that you're capable of doing physical expression, and how does that fit into these periods of times where we can do it, as opposed to treating fitness, just bitch slapping it, right, and saying, oh, how can I lose fat during this period of time? Like how lower order is that in terms of a concept, around this important period for a lot of people? So maybe we can keep it on that note.
I do have one more question I want to ask, if that's okay.
Oh, for sure. Sorry, I wasn't trying to end up there.
No, it was a very strong. It just
felt like it,
strong moment. We'll come back there.
Okay.
But I am curious about any differences between men and women, and coaching men versus women through Ramadan.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with FEME. I do CCP coaches actually, only through experience and conversation, forum topics, and approaches to that, but. I don't have any particular experience. I'm just going Rolodex now of experiences through that I would be able to add to say any massive differences.
I have like an N=6 or 7 females, and versus my N=25 to 30 males. The females are usually more resilient throughout Ramadan and coming out of Ramadan, and it's less of a
goes without saying.
Yeah, it's less of a nuance in terms of like coming out of it. They're just like, it's day 31. Let's say it goes 30. They're like, yeah, I'm fucking good. Everything's fine. I feel good. With males, it's like, okay, like I need a week. I need a week to get my life together, right? So it's not N=a lot, but just the ones that I've worked with, I've noticed that the females come out of it a little bit quicker than the males have. By out of it, I mean like back to like
Got it.
homeostasis. They're just like, I didn't go too far away from my baseline throughout that 30 days.
Yeah, I think some of the biological things you can, if you were to color it just with biology and not with belief and background and even training experience and et cetera, you may want to think about the neuromuscular efficiency or the capability of a female expressing a really high electrical component and the frequency of that, right? Maybe why the males at the end, just are exhausted is that all those attempts at a real high electrical component with a high nervous system capability, as well as higher loads over time, absolutely, would result in just CNS fatigue if the total resources coming in are not as high, meaning net cals are down for most people, either men or women. So that's something to take into consideration. And I think along those same lines, I think there's something about females in terms of pacing, and I need to really explain that in a much more detail, but an opportunity for knowledge around an internal intrinsic awareness of pacing that I think is is just embedded a lot more appropriately, that I think may come to serve them really well in a period of time that a coach can take going into that. Meaning the odd case, you take 10,000 females, 10,000 males, and I'm going to give a really much more higher percentage of females that have this intrinsic awareness of pacing over there, whether that's a neuromuscular efficiency, an inability, high CNS recruitment, etc. I don't think it does really matter, but there's something about that. So you can take that into consideration, I think, if I was to offer any like biological framework on top of it.
Oh, and I'll add, the women always wanted to do more.
More fasting
No,
after or more exercise?
More exercise.
Yeah,
more exercise.
which does make sense based upon my previous points.
Yeah, more exercise, more fitness.
Just able to tolerate more volume.
Yeah.
Did you give them
just
more
wanted
or?
to. Gosh, that would be a case by case basis, but yeah, sometimes yeah, sometimes no. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if any of the something we can keep researching, because I know that's where some of the studies of Ramadan and physicality are missing, is a female tone to it. It's blatantly obvious in a whole ton of physiology research for a long period of time, but this is one area that doesn't have a lot of that. So I would just suppose or posit that it probably is some kind of a hormonal underpinning that has a big part to play with that for what they're capable of in fuel substrate utilization activity, with changes in total calories, cortisol drives being different, neural drive and anabolic drive are obviously, if it's not obvious to a lot of people, are highly connected. So I think that may have a part to play in what they were requesting, not just the biological footprint we're talking about. It's probably the nervous system and a hormonal regulation underneath that allows, higher opportunity for expression of those really challenging things. I think to get super nuanced, to be interesting to see changes in menses and rhythms of different cycles throughout that period of time, and how training would change based upon that, because as mentioned, substrate utilization, mood, and capabilities for training does change in that period. So that would be a very nuanced, pretty interesting conversation. Yeah, which does need some research. It's tough to do it, but it does need some research on that, or more research. I
Yeah, all the papers I read are 15-year-old plus males. But they did have like a decent amount of non-athletic population, so it's a good start. For sure.
Guys, any final thoughts you'd like to leave coaches who are working with clients through Ramadan, or maybe individuals who are going to be observing Ramadan with, related to fitness?
Yeah, I'd recap a couple points that James hit on. Just understand what your intentions are. Why are you doing Ramadan? Put Ramadan first, not fitness first, at least for this 30 days or 28 days, 28 to 30 days.
29 a quarter.
And be okay with doing less of everything. You're doing less in life. You're doing less eating. You're doing, less fitness. Don't do less sleeping, though.
Yeah, the sleeping one was one that we didn't really discuss. Of the same with macro cals.
Yeah.
There's probably a deficit over 30 days that I've observed too that is taken into consideration. So again, that does go back to the resilience thing, right? You got to say, well, how resilient are you, and can you do a -1 hour net for 30 days? And a lot of people can't handle that, but it is going to be a reality for a whole ton of people. So that's interesting. I wouldn't add anything besides what Carl said for the gratitude of being capable of physically expressing, seeing where fitness fits into the entire thing. And hopefully coaches listening in, or those who listen to us, can kind of see that physical expression is in the center, and it's belief blind, it's color blind, it's gender blind, and there's always room for niggling on our importance that we place upon how grateful we have to be for being able to physically express. And this is another example of how those things will always be there.
Well, James, it was awesome to have you here for
it's great to
backroom
be
talk.
Truly, front room talking, the back room, or talking front room.
We're talking back. So there's a new. We have to make this official, but there's now a back room, and then there's a back room. This is the back room.
The back room is just for us.
Back room. Yeah. Back.
Back room.
Yep. Back room.
As always, guys, please make sure you subscribe, leave us a review on audio, and leave us a comment on YouTube. We do appreciate it.
And then I would just add, if you guys have a lot of experience, more experience than us, teach us some things, right? Like throw some comments here. Let's have some conversation around your experiences and maybe some things that we missed, or maybe some things that we didn't think of.